$873.7 billion. That's what U.S. universities hold in endowments. Harvard controls $53.2 billion.
Harvard grew its endowment to more than $53 billion in the latest fiscal year. The endowment's management company says public and private stock markets drove that growth. Harvard is the nation's wealthiest university.
Yale operates like a hedge fund. The University of Texas system holds $46.9 billion in assets. Yet American students owe $1.77 trillion in loans.
America's student debt is approaching $880 billion.
Student loan debt in this country has reached $1 trillion.
Now greater than America's collective credit card debt.
$1.7 trillion in student debt. That is a number that is only going to keep rising.
The average graduate carries $37,000 in debt.
Student debt, on average, they owe about $37,000.
Here's what doesn't add up. While university wealth keeps growing, tuition rises faster than ever. Student debt hits record highs. If universities are sitting on nearly $1 trillion, why are students drowning in debt?
Millions of Americans have one thing in common: a crippling amount of student debt.
This is how American universities became billion-dollar businesses, and how students became the ones paying for it.
On any given college campus, 60% of the students are borrowing money to pay for school.
When universities became businesses. Universities didn't set out to become corporations. They were pushed. In the 1980s, state legislatures began cutting appropriations to public colleges. Federal grants stagnated. Schools faced a choice: shrink or find new revenue. They chose revenue. But what started as survival didn't last long. By the 2000s, institutions competed like Fortune 500 companies. They launched six-figure marketing campaigns targeting international students. They hired branding consultants to craft university experiences. They built luxury dormitories that looked like boutique hotels, private study lounges, resort-style pools, climbing walls, gourmet dining halls. College wasn't just about education anymore. It was a product, and that product needed to sell.
You've probably heard about skyrocketing college tuition, but what you may not know is what many colleges are actually doing with all that money. Pouring it into perks, from upscale eateries to top-of-the-line movie theaters and even water parks. Students living it up in luxury dorms like never before.
The University of Central Florida spread across 276 buildings, enrolling 69,320 students. Arizona State swelled to 79,000 on-campus students, with another 66,000 online. Rutgers enrolled 67,000. These schools weren't just growing, they were scaling like tech startups. But growth came at a cost. Faculty-to-student ratios exploded. At UCF, some lecture halls seat 1,200 students. That's more people than work as news reporters in many states. The student-to-faculty ratio hit 30-1. Instruction became secondary, volume became primary. More students meant more tuition, and tuition became the engine driving everything. To squeeze out even more revenue, universities recruited aggressively beyond their borders. NYU and USC marketed heavily to Chinese students and other internationals who paid full price. No scholarships, no aid, no discounts. Out-of-state tuition at public universities often topped $30,000 per year. For cash-strapped schools, these students represented pure profit.
It is a source of revenue, and in Maine, we're hard hit because of decreased revenue from the state and federal government.
The model had flipped. Students were no longer citizens being educated for the public good. They were customers, and universities were selling them prestige. The revenue. Where universities really make their money. Tuition and fees form the foundation. In 2020 to 21, private for-profit colleges pulled 93% of the revenue from tuition alone. Even public universities, historically backed by taxpayers, now lean heavily on student payments. Tuition accounts for 16% of total revenue at public schools and 19% at private nonprofits. The average published tuition at a private nonprofit university in 2022 was $40,713 per year. Public universities charge $9,834 for in-state students. But tuition's only the beginning. Universities have perfected revenue diversification. Room and board work like real estate contracts. Meal plans carry hotel-level markups. Parking fees, lab fees, technology fees, and activity fees are each line items. Auxiliary enterprises like dormitories, dining halls, bookstores, and conference centers account for 4% of public university revenue. These aren't public services, they're profit centers. Then there's government funding. In fiscal year 2025, state governments put $129 billion toward higher education. Federal research and development grants added another $59.7 billion. Johns Hopkins alone pulled in $3.8 billion in federal R&D funding in 2023. Medicare paid $17.8 billion for graduate medical education in 2021. The GI Bill sent $8.6 billion to colleges through veteran students. And here's what most people miss. Federal student aid, loans, Pell Grants, and work-study programs delivered $121 billion annually to universities through their students. That money flows directly into university accounts, paid for by students who will spend decades repaying it. Sports brought in another stream.
Over 100 years ago, the NCAA was created to regulate and control college sports.
The NCAA collected roughly $1 billion per year, mostly from basketball tournament TV rights, and sent $600 million to Division I schools. Elite football programs locked in media contracts worth tens of millions. Athletic departments ran like businesses within the nonprofit campus, complete with sponsorships, merchandise, and licensing deals. But the real wealth sat elsewhere in endowments. U.S. colleges collectively hold $873.7 billion in endowment assets. Think about that number. $873.7 billion. These aren't idle savings accounts. They're actively managed investment portfolios. Stocks, bonds, real estate, hedge funds, private equity. Harvard's endowment covers 37% of its operating budget. Yale's investment office hires Wall Street fund managers and chases high-risk, high-return strategies. The University of Texas system holds $46.9 billion in assets.
Which U.S. college endowment fund is bigger than the GDPs of nations like Jordan, Latvia, Tanzania, and others? Well, of course, it's Harvard.
And here's the part that changes everything. In many cases, investment income rivals or tops tuition revenue. Universities don't just educate students. They manage capital, they back startups, they license patents, they own hospitals. In every practical sense, they're asset managers. How student debt powers the system. None of this growth would have been possible without student loans. In the 1980s, federal borrowing limits expanded under Ronald Reagan's administration. The logic was simple. Education's an investment. Debt is good debt, so loan caps rose and kept rising. The average federal student loan per undergraduate doubled from $2,087 in 1990 to 91 to $3,895 by 2023 to 24. It peaked at around $7,000 in 2010. Parent Plus loans let families borrow even more, often without income checks. The floodgates opened. This flood of available credit had a predictable effect. Universities raised tuition. Why wouldn't they? Students could borrow whatever the school charged. The Bennett hypothesis, named after Reagan's Secretary of Education, William Bennett, argued that easy credit directly raised tuition higher. Research confirmed it. But here's the mechanism. Student loans became a conveyor belt funneling cash into university budgets. Federal loans poured over $100 billion per year into campuses. For-profit universities built entire business models around it. Federal law capped their Title IV aid revenue at 90%, meaning they could pull nearly all their income from government-backed loans. Students signed the promissory notes. Universities cashed the checks. And the debt, now $1.77 trillion nationally, is stuck with borrowers for decades.
Today's university graduates finish school with almost $30,000 in student loan debt on average. That's an increase of 300% since 1970.
Graduation offered no guarantee of relief.
We know most of the $1.7 trillion in student debt is simply never going to be paid back.
Only 60% of bachelor's degree holders fully repaid their loans within 10 years. Among Pell Grant recipients, just 50% finished repayment in a decade. Black college graduates fared even worse. 66% still owed after 10 years, with a median balance of $40,000.
Millions of young people are struggling to build wealth. The burden is so big that it prevents millennials from buying a house, getting married, and having children.
And here's what breaks the system. Those who dropped out faced the harshest outcome: debt without the degree. Default rates climbed, credit scores tanked. And universities? They faced zero consequences. They'd already been paid in full.
Student loan delinquencies have been on the rise since the start of the new year.
The hidden fortune. Universities as Wall Street players. The endowment model reveals what universities have actually become. These institutions don't simply collect donations and fund scholarships. They invest aggressively. Harvard, Yale, and Stanford pioneered this approach in the 1980s and 90s, hiring professional investment managers and chasing alternative assets, private equity, venture capital, commodities, real estate. Returns took off. Endowments grew faster than inflation, faster than tuition increases, faster than the economy itself. Yale showed how far this could go. The school hired David Swensen, a Wall Street professional, to run its endowment like a hedge fund. He poured 60% of Yale's money into alternative investments, private equity, venture capital, real estate, assets most people can't touch. Swensen handpicked external investment managers, the kind who get access to deals before anyone else hears about them.
Yale's massive endowment fund, he pioneered an investment strategy that expanded the portfolio from a standard mix of stocks and bonds to substantial holdings in real estate, private equity, and venture capital.
The results? Yale's endowment returned 41% in 2000. It hit 28% in 2007. Over 3 decades, that strategy added $36 billion in value. This wasn't a university managing donations. It was institutional-grade asset management. Harvard followed the same playbook. Harvard Management Company, the university's dedicated investment arm, spread its endowment across private equity, hedge funds, and real estate. The school bought property. It backed venture capital funds that invested in Moderna and DoorDash. It hired professional fund managers to hunt for market advantages. In 2024 alone, Harvard's endowment returned 9.6%, adding $2.5 billion. That investment income now covers more than a third of the university's operating budget. Think about that. Harvard makes more from Wall Street than it does from a huge chunk of its students. Stanford did the same, just with a Silicon Valley twist. The university planted early stakes in venture capital, including Google, before anyone knew what it would become. Stanford holds over $5 billion in real estate, much of it on campus land that keeps appreciating. The endowment returned 14.3% in 2025. Stanford Management Company runs the whole operation, balancing risk and return like any investment firm would. Half the portfolio sits in illiquid assets, private equity, and real estate, because the returns justify locking up the cash. This isn't wealth preservation, it's wealth expansion. Smaller schools followed the blueprint. Rowan University's foundation launched a $25 million innovation venture fund to back faculty and student-led startups. The University of Chicago's Polsky Center runs a venture fund for research commercialization. Drexel created the University City Sherpas Fund, pooling alumni investors. Tech transfer offices backed faculty inventions. Licensing deals brought in royalties. Patents became profit centers. In practice, investment income sometimes topped campus operating revenue. A university president could talk up student access and public mission, while the institution's real financial growth came from hedge fund bets and venture capital stakes. The gap was obvious. Tuition climbed every single year.
In-state tuition at public four-year schools increased from $3,800 in 1990 to more than $10,000. That's approaching 3 times the cost after adjusting for inflation.
Students borrowed more every single year, and endowments swelled, completely tax-free. Under IRS rules, universities pay no taxes on investment gains as long as they keep nonprofit status.
And since most universities are nonprofits or government entities, those endowments come with a multi-billion-dollar tax break.
The result? Wealth accumulation matching the largest corporations.
Not just big, it's huge, $39 billion. For context, Facebook has $41.1 billion in what's essentially cash. Amazon has $41.2, and Coca-Cola has $16 billion. And it's not only schools like Harvard.
Shielded from taxation, protected from accountability, and completely disconnected from the affordability crisis facing students. The nonprofit illusion. Profit without the label. The nonprofit label provides cover. It signals a public mission, charitable purpose, educational ideals. But many universities operate no differently from for-profit corporations. Grand Canyon University shows this perfectly. Originally a nonprofit, it converted to for-profit status in 2004 to chase aggressive growth.
2004, GCU became a for-profit university after falling $20 million in debt.
Online enrollment exploded. Then, in 2018, it flipped back to nonprofit status.
Grand Canyon University in Phoenix announcing the end of its for-profit operations.
And here's the kicker. The CEO openly bragged about a 34% operating margin after the shift, specifically noting that the nonprofit brand had an impact on enrollment and revenue. The label was marketing. The business model never changed.
The school's president says the change will put GCU on a level playing field with other institutions for tax status, contributions, and research grant opportunities.
In 2020, the University of Arizona bought the struggling for-profit Ashford University and relaunched it as the nonprofit University of Arizona Global Campus. Critics call it a sham, a regulatory trick to grab federal aid and avoid oversight, while keeping for-profit expansion tactics intact.
It was originally a women's, I think, Catholic college in Iowa that was purchased and rebranded as, Ashford eventually, and as a for-profit, and with the idea that one time they had enrollments of 80,000 students.
Even elite nonprofits showed corporate behavior. Executive pay climbed into 7 figures. NYU's president earned $1.3 million in 2011. Meanwhile, universities increasingly relied on adjunct faculty, part-time instructors paid per course, often without benefits, earning poverty wages despite holding advanced degrees. The labor model looked like gig economy exploitation. Costs were cut. Profits, or surpluses, in nonprofit speak, went into construction, branding, and endowment growth, not tuition relief. Harvard professor Michael Sandel captured the contradiction. In practice, most colleges and universities do less to expand opportunity than to consolidate privilege. The stated mission was equity. The actual operation was exclusivity. The price students pay: debt, dropout, and despair. The human cost is measurable. Over 43 million Americans carry student loan debt.
Americans have racked up more than $1.7 trillion, that's with a T, dollars in student loans spread across some 43 million borrowers.
Studies show widespread anxiety, depression, and mental strain among borrowers.
There's more student loan debt than there's all car loans. There's more student debt than there's all credit card debt in America.
Online forums reveal constant feelings of sadness, fear, anger, uncertainty, and exhaustion. The psychological burden is real. And it lasts.
Research shows that it also causes poorer mental and physical health and less overall satisfaction with life.
Debt reshapes entire lives.
Today, 1 in 5 Americans have student loan debt.
Young adults delay buying homes. They put off marriage and starting families. They avoid career risks. Entrepreneurship rates drop. Wealth building stalls.
One of the most talked about side effects of the student debt crisis is how it's forcing borrowers to delay traditional markers of adulthood. One survey found that 21% of borrowers had delayed getting married, 26% had pushed back having kids, and 36% had put off buying a home, forcing an entire generation of borrowers to question the opportunity cost of going to college.
The promise of upward mobility, the whole reason for borrowing in the first place, disappears under monthly payments stretching across decades.
I started with $80,000. I have been paying for 10 years. The grand total is I have paid $120,000 and I still owe $76,000. How the f*** is this possible?
Completion rates reveal another brutal reality. Just 41% of the time, First-time students earn a bachelor's degree in 4 years. Only 59% finish within 6 years. For low-income students, part-time students, and students of color, the numbers drop even further. Research shows that each additional $1,000 in loans correlates with roughly a 3% higher chance of dropping out. Students with more than $10,000 in debt have notably lower graduation rates. And dropout carries a brutal financial penalty. No degree, no wage boost, but full debt. Borrowers who never graduate default more often. They repay more slowly. They lose access to credit, housing, and jobs. Yet the system profits either way. Universities collect tuition payments up front, semester by semester. Whether the student ultimately succeeds or fails doesn't matter financially to the institution. The revenue's already been captured. American universities were built on a public mission: educate citizens, expand access to knowledge, serve society. Somewhere along the way, that mission got rewritten. Government funding pulled back, market logic rushed in, and higher education morphed into an industry that extracts wealth from students, piles up tax-free capital, and operates with corporate precision while claiming charitable purpose. The question isn't whether universities have become businesses. They have. The real question is whether anyone will demand they work differently. Because right now, the system rewards endowment growth over tuition relief, expansion over access, and prestige over outcomes. And as long as those incentives stay in place, the business of American universities will remain exactly what it is. So, if universities are operating like corporations, should students be treated like customers or citizens? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if this opened your eyes to something you didn't know before, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. There's more to uncover.